Hi, everybody. This is Inside My Wallet, episode 4. I'm Amanda Edwards from Tidy My Money, and this is Andrea Kennedy from Wiser Wealth. And episode 4 is really going to focus on balance sheet. But before I talk about that as well, I would like to recap episode 3. We went over cash flow. So one of the 2 data points of your money. So cash flow does what the word says it is, everything of cash coming into your house and all the cash going out of your house. So it's really the income and expenses on a day-to-day, month-to-month, and year basis. So we looked at cash flow, and episode 4 is looking at balance sheet. And I think before we start, Andrea wanted to mention something very important.
So I think we've been talking we've done a lot of reflection in the first 2 podcasts. Now we're looking at kind of the here and now, right? So we've looked in the past, we're kind of looking at the here with the cash flow, and balance sheet is the same thing. It's a snapshot of where you are right now in time. And I think one of the best things that we can do, and it's going to be part of your homework, is to really do some goal setting for yourself. And normally I tell people, look at kind of something that you can do this year. So like, what can I do this year to improve, one of these situations or both, as well as what does my life look like 5 years down the line? Like, what am I actually aiming towards? And a lot of people will say, oh, I just want to get rich, but that's actually, so that's okay. It can be your goal. But what I would say is define what you mean by that, because that word means so many different things to so many different people. I work with people whose money is anywhere from $1 million to 25 million, and they all feel very, very differently about what that word wealthy means. So, some of the people with more don't feel particularly wealthy, and some of the people with less, but who are actively involved in their money, feel much wealthier. So I think when we say we want to be wealthy or we want to be rich, we really have to articulate what that means. Is it a lifestyle? Is it a number? This kind of thought has to go into our goals. They can't just be a blank, I want this, without really defining what that is. And I would say better than just rich, I would say a great goal, if you don't have one, is to understand what financial security is and work towards that, because that is somewhat different. And I have recognized that as people become more financially secure, they think much less about becoming wealthy, okay? Wealth, in a way, is really financial security for a lot of people. And they're actually 2 somewhat different things.
Yeah. And we're going to talk now about like the facts of a balance sheet. And I think we'll circle back to that goal setting after again, to really like kind of drive through what you were saying. A balance sheet, the exercise and the homework later, but what is a balance sheet? A balance sheet is really looking at everything that you have and own and everything that you owe. So we call it assets and liabilities. It will look like a list like what Andrea is holding up. So it can just be a list written on Excel or a piece of paper. And so all your assets are things like your bank account, your savings, your investments. I really look at, and property. And we are really looking at things that have what we call like a liquid value. So these are things that, you can use that money or you can get to that asset easily, let's say. So what I mean by that is I'm not really including things like paintings or family jewelry in this list. I'm really talking about kind of cash and money. And then things that you owe will be things like mortgages, personal loans, and credit cards, hopefully, or however many they may be. Those all get listed down on your liabilities. So things that you owe to people. And what you're trying to get to is your net assets, right? So where you sit at the bottom line, taking all that you have and minusing everything that you owe to see what you really have as your nest egg. And as the money that you have to do other things like build upon that money, basically. And I think that when you do this exercise, you have to be radically honest and everything has to come out. So even if you have a partner, it's good to do this exercise with them as well, because especially if you joint own things, it's all got to go down, on this list.
And just if I can add to this, I would just say that it's kind of like the map and in the way that you understand you grow your money over time, because this number will change, right? This is a snapshot today, and this number will change over time. And if you're doing it, well, if you're doing it with someone who, if you're in a relationship or a partnership and the person doesn't want to do this, do it anyway, right? This is,
Yes.
they will come along over time, but it's a very good way to say, listen, this is where we're at. And we'll talk about couple stuff later. This is where we've been, this is where we're at. And I have to understand where I'm going and how do we grow our net worth every single year. And most people should be growing it. You'll have years where you dip, but more or less this is a way to, it's kind of like a guide map to your own money and to growing things. And if things aren't growing, then you've got to come back and say, why? Is it how you're invested? Is it you're not saving enough and all that? This is where you can find the clues
Yeah.
to what's going right and wrong with your money, basically.
And some people, I mean, for example, when I started my financial journey, I was very heavy on the debt side. And so when I initially looked at my balance sheet, I felt terrible. I mean, I felt terrible shame and I felt terrible. And I, wanted to go into like hopelessness a little bit. But I think it was important to remind myself that it was a point, as Andrea said, it's a snapshot. And if you're looking at it, and especially if you're like you're raising money consciously into your into your consciousness and you're going to deal with it, you have an opportunity to change it. It's if you're ignoring it and you don't know what this number is, you have no chance really of improving it greatly. You will just get by and it will all feel very nerve-wracking and there will be a big dark cloud over your head because you'll feel it. So, being radically honest and really looking at those numbers. And if there's debt, there's debt. And you know what to prioritize and what's costing you money and how to get rid of it and you can go forward. And I think back to that like goal setting, is that you can say, all right, my goal is to get rid of debt and to build this number up. And these are the things that I would like. And that kind of becomes everyone talks about vision boards and things like that. But it's amazing that when you have something to aim for, you can start to go, oh, I can get there if I do X, Y, and Z. So
and this basically, the balance sheet gives you a way to start measuring it, right? You can actually measure, are we getting rid of debt? Are we not getting rid of debt? And so on. I mean, if you don't ever put kind of a flag down on your own money, then you don't know if things are getting better or getting worse. And you're always going to feel like, as you said, confused about it, right?
Yeah.
So I have, similar to you, I have clients who are very good savers, but they're not investing any of it. So,
yeah.
And they can never save enough to keep up with inflation that compounds year on year. So they also need to kind of just start putting money away and investing to grow this balance sheet, right? So there's a lot of ways we can grow balance sheet. We can pay down our debt and we can invest, right? And we can save more. So if you can do all three of those things,
which we hope everyone will do,
which is really the goal, you're going to grow your net worth. But if you only do one of them, then your net worth isn't going to grow as quickly, right?
Yeah.
And some people need to get out of the hole, right? You have to get out of debt to start net savings. But once you are out of debt or are managing your debt efficiently, the accumulation of savings and the accumulation of investment, which will help people grow this thing that we're talking about today, their balance sheet over time. But doing those three things consistently, which goes to habits, matters.
Yeah. And then, you talked about, if somebody, starts to feel shame or depressed, the worst thing they can do is dive into like grabbing, whatever sounds like a quick cash scheme. You want.
Right. So this happens a lot. So I deal with, again, a whole range of people and situations, but I think that the ones that worry me the most aren't young people who are kind of struggling with debt because there's a way out of it. Time and money are all connected, and the longer you can save and invest and pay down debt, and the more you do this, the more your financial security becomes more secure and your wealth grows over time. But what makes me most nervous is when people don't do the work that we're talking about now, which is cash flow and balance sheet, and they wait until they're very close to retirement or 5 years away from retirement, and they're finally looking at everything and they realize, oh my God, I'm not where I should be. And then they go and they try to invest in very high risk things, hoping that things will turn out well. That is what really is what I would like through this type of talking to people, I'd like to try to avoid, because that then does become risky, because as you near retirement, that money that you're earning is going to end. And if you're all of a sudden in high risk investments to catch up, I mean, that's just a position you really don't want to be in. Yeah. So I think you want to be calm. You want to say, this is where we are. You've got to be very sober. What are the changes we can make? How quickly can we make them? And this goes to habits, which is kind of the next podcast, how we actually change habits. But you want to stay calm and focused and sober about whatever situation you're in, and make changes slowly, because slow and steady tends to win the race in the end.
I mean, that child story of the tortoise and the hare is quite
Yes.
correct, right? You really do. You say that very often, slow and steady. And
but I think that partly we don't see this. What we see when we look online are people who are young and already rich, because usually their parents have money, something like that. So everything that we see online goes against the slow and steady, and it goes to kind of the excitement of very quick wealth. And I think that's why people are confused. And yes, of course, some people, well, I'll go back to this. Some people do, and I counsel many of them, they get money very quickly. Yeah. But they don't feel wealthy at the end, which is why when I talk about goal setting, doing all these steps are important, because even though they might have $25 million, they actually don't feel wealthy, because they haven't done the slow and steady processing, habit forming, understanding of how to invest, understanding how to live off their investments. They know they're not going to go bankrupt, but they really don't understand how their money can last, even with what most people would consider a lot of wealth. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for slow and steady and forming good habits. And your balance sheet, you can't do it without knowing what's on your balance sheet. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely, tidy my money like words, you can't skip this, it's very simple. It's the first steps in that financial, stability. This is stability, knowing where you are, and you can't go on to building that security or that wealth without it. It's just, you might say, but I don't have time for this, and it's very difficult, and I'm not, well, you have to, pull yourself in, and you have to control yourself, and you have to make the time and find it, and do this work, do the cash flow work, looking at where it's all going, and do the balance sheet work, so that you can, set yourself a goal and kind of go there and not panic, right? I mean, like you said, there is a lot online of, just do this and you'll all be fine, and do this scheme, and, and it's just all a bit of, there's a bit of nonsense out there as much as there's good stuff. So it's getting factual.
And I think I just wanted to add there, you may be in a household where all this information is not readily available to you, or you feel uncomfortable about asking for it. But at the end of the day, I think this, knowing this information will actually benefit, two heads are better than one. So I think we will talk later about how to talk to partners about money, particularly if they are withholding information. But there's no reason that if you are in a relationship and you're sharing a household and you're sharing expenses, or you're partnered with somebody for life, that this shouldn't be secret information that only one person gets to have. It should be something that both people know, because things happen. People pass away, people get divorced, people go through disabilities, but at some point you may need to take over control of everything. So if that, you have to prepare to know that day could come.
Yeah. And I mentioned on the last thing, there usually is like a default parent in the house, and there's a default accountant in the house.
Yes.
And I'm a big believer that, it is really, I mean, usually it does end up being that one person is the accountant, or like in your family, one person is the investor. But it doesn't mean that the other person is clueless, So I'm the default accountant, but my husband still knows everything about our numbers, and everything is there when he needs it. So it's important that, if someone's taken responsibility for it, it doesn't mean that it's a closed subject to the other partner.
Exactly.
So, and they can keep doing it. If you don't want to be the home accountant, it's fine. You still have to know everything. You have to know. It's knowledge, and it's much needed.
So is our home, are we ready to give homework?
Yeah, so the homework is to go and, again, like we mentioned in the cash flow, try to find a way. So there's Excel tools out there, or just
Download
listing
it.
it out on a piece of paper, and to
Right.
look at, everything that you have, assets, and everything that you owe to other people.
And then I was just
yes.
saying, on the back of that, once you've compiled all this information, and for some people it might be a little bit of a treasure hunt because it's not all in one place. I think the goal setting is really important. And we're going to do habits next, and how we psychologically prepare ourselves and form new habits easily, because they may be necessary to meet some of the goals that you've outlined for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it for us, and we will see you next podcast. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.